watching
CRDN.
Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.
Good afternoon. You're watching Civil Rights Daily News. I'm MALIYAH Simone. Today we're going to start with some stories across the globe, and then we're going to move on to some local stories closer to home. The State Department has issued a rare worldwide caution security alert for American citizens traveling or residing abroad. Officials point to escalating geopolitical tensions in the Middle East as the primary catalyst, warning that the security environment remains complex with the potential for sudden, unforeseen escalation. Now, federal agencies are urging travelers inside the region to exercise heightened vigilance, noting that commercial air travel could face sudden disruptions, including emergency airspace closures and canceled flights. For Americans planning international trips outside of the region, diplomatic officials recommend carefully reconsidering travel through the Middle East and the transit hubs there. The warning notes that threats from regional state actors and aligned groups are not limited to the immediate conflict zone. Diplomatic facilities, corporate interests, and locations frequently visited by Americans worldwide could face targeted security risks. When initial combat operations began, the State Department did issue an urgent warning instructing Americans across more than a dozen Middle Eastern countries to leave immediately using commercial transportation. That caused a major uproar on social media as Americans struggled to find their way back home. Flights were canceled, they weren't able to make it, they looked for boats, they looked for trains, and many of them got stuck overseas. However, as regional airspace rapidly did close and major airlines canceled hundreds of flights, stranded travelers quickly discovered that commercial escape routes were vanishing. In the crucial early days of the conflict, consular advisories explicitly told citizens not to expect any military evacuations or direct government interference in order to get them home. These Americans were stuck overseas for months, days. They couldn't get home, and they didn't have any assistance, leaving thousands of everyday Americans to navigate dangerous conditions and chaotic airports entirely on their own. That hands-off stance drew a lot of sharp criticism for stranded travelers and their families back home in the States trying to get them home. The congressional lawmakers who argued that federal officials failed to adequately plan for the safety of civilians abroad. Critics pointed out that while other foreign governments moved quickly to organize government-funded charter flights, American citizens were met largely with automated hotlines and instructions to book costly and hard-to-find commercial seats. While the administration eventually allocated emergency funding for chartered departure flights, weeks later, the initial delay underscored widespread vulnerabilities in how Washington coordinates emergency protections for its citizens trapped in sudden international crises. Several major foreign governments have also issued urgent travel advisories for their own citizens, mirroring Washington's concerns, while in some cases taking even stricter stances to protect their citizens. Governments in the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and across the European Union have updated their official travel guidance, urging their populations to reconsider non-essential travel to the Middle East and to remain on high alert when passing through international transit points. British and Canadian foreign ministries have highlighted the growing unpredictability of regional airspace, warning that travelers that commercial flights and routes can be suspended or redirected with little to no notice. European diplomatic agencies have similarly alerted citizens to potential safety risks around Western commercial interests, diplomatic posts, and popular tourist gathering spots worldwide. What sets several of these international advisories apart from the American response is the tone regarding state-supported assistance. Nations like Australia and several Western European states explicitly warn their travelers not to count on any government evacuations if regional infrastructure does shut down. By aligning their advisories, international allies are signaling a shared concern over global security risks, while also placing the burden of immediate travel contingencies, planning squarely on individual travel. The State Department is advising all overseas travelers to register with the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, known as STEP. Registration allows U.S. embassies to locate citizens quickly wherever they are overseas and during an emergency in order to send them direct security updates. So that's something that you can download on your phone. You can subscribe via app and via text, via email. That way you get alerts immediately when they're issued, and they can find you in order to help get you out. Now, obviously that wasn't the case last time that this happened at the very beginning of this conflict, but the hope is they've got things together in order to better evacuate their citizens and our citizens and Americans overseas. Officials also emphasize that travelers should monitor local news closely, maintain contingency plans, and verify flight statuses directly with airlines before heading to international airports. You're watching Civil Rights Daily News. I'll be right back with more on the evacuations as well as the war in Iran.
You are watching
CRDN
Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.
We're back. You're watching Civil Rights Daily News. I'm MALIYAH SIMONE. We're moving on to the war in Iran, which has a $37.5 billion price tag so far. But we have some updates that may be interesting to some Americans. The financial cost of direct U.S. military operations against Iran has reached $37.5 billion, according to the Defense Department testimony, which was delivered before the Senate Appropriations Committee. Defense officials confirmed the updated total during hearings on Capitol Hill, marking an $8 billion increase over previous Pentagon estimates. The mounting price tag reflects the ongoing deployment of naval carrier strike groups, high-end air defense interceptors, and thousands of precision-guided munitions used across the Middle Eastern region. As the administration presses lawmakers to approve a supplemental funding request worth tens of billions more dollars for the Department of Defense, the figures are sparking some intense debate in Washington over spending priorities and transparency. Congressional critics and fiscal oversight groups emphasize that these off-budget emergency allocations bypass the standard fiscal constraints while driving up national debt. Big surprise there. Economics and policy advocates warn that sustained spending on far-reaching overseas conflicts risk diverting vital public resources away from critical domestic needs, even as everyday working families continue to face economic strains at home. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth faced sharp questioning during his testimony before the Senate panel as he defended the administration's military strategy and argued that massive spending increases are essential to maintain national deterrence. Hegseth cast the expanding budget request as a necessary price for military readiness, arguing that failing to rapidly restock depleted weapons, stockpiles, and fund ongoing operations would severely compromise national security. While highlighting efforts to reform Pentagon procurement and modernize the armed forces under a peace through strength framework, Hegseth confronted pushback from lawmakers who questioned the long-term strategic plan and transparency regarding war expenditures. The Defense Secretary stood firm on the administration's stance, maintaining that robust funding remains a primary mechanism to global power and to protect American interests against foreign adversaries. Federal intelligence and law enforcement agencies are maintaining an elevated security posture following explicit and ongoing threats directed towards President Donald Trump by the Iranian regime. Now, federal authorities, including the Secret Service and the Department of Homeland Security, have continuously monitored the intelligence surrounding the assassination plots and proxy operations originating from Tehran. Intelligence officials emphasize that the regime's rhetoric and covert plotting stem directly from the 2020 strike that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, an action that Iranian leaders have repeatedly vowed to avenge. Justice Department indictments and intelligence assessments over the last several years have detailed multiple disruptions in the Iranian criminal proxies operating inside the United States. While Tehran frequently frames its public declarations as calls for religious vengeance and political retribution, counterterrorism analysts stress that the threat extends beyond mere posturing, pointing to active surveillance efforts targeting high-ranking American officials. In response, federal authorities have expanded protective details and security infrastructure around the president and senior national security personnel. The ongoing threats highlight the persistent security challenges that American leadership is facing as regional hostilities remain acute. White House officials have repeatedly warned that any direct attempt on the life of an American president or public servant would be met with swift and decisive military consequences, underscoring how personal retaliation rhetoric continues to intersect dangerously with the broader geopolitical conflict. Obviously, this is still a developing story. The war on Iran is continuing to escalate. Despite the conversations that we've had with Kuwait and with the other nations that are involved in the conflict, it's just continuing to escalate. So we're going to keep a close eye on it, keep an eye on our broadcasts to get some updates from us. We'll be right back with Civil Rights Daily News.
You are watching
CRDN.
Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.
You're watching Civil Rights Daily News. I'm MALIYAH Simone. We have a disturbing story out of the United States where a mother murdered 3 of her children during a postpartum psychosis episode, and she may not be found guilty. Jury selection has officially begun in the high-profile murder trial of Lindsay Clancy. The Massachusetts mother is accused of strangling her 3 young children in early 2023. Clancy, a former labor and delivery nurse, does not dispute her role in the deaths of 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and 8-month-old Callan. Instead, her defense team is mounting an insanity defense, arguing that she was in the grips of a severe psychosis and sudden episode of postpartum psychosis that stripped her of her capacity to understand the reality or wrongfulness of her actions. If the jury finds that mental illness rendered her legally insane at the time of the tragedy, Clancy would be found not criminally responsible and would be committed to a state psychiatric facility rather than sentenced to prison. The case has ignited a national conversation around postpartum mental health care, which is very important, and not many people really take that into consideration when considering having children and the effects on a mother after birth. There are severe gaps in how maternal medical crises are misdiagnosed or treated or handled. Defense filings detail how Clancy actively sought medical help in the weeks that led up to the tragedy. She checked into psychiatric care, consulted specialists, and reported severe anxiety, auditory hallucinations, and intrusive thoughts. Medical advocates emphasize that postpartum psychosis is a rare, life-threatening psychiatric emergency that can rapidly distort a parent's perception of reality. They point out that individuals experiencing profound psychotic delusions often believe that they're protecting their children from perceived external harm, illustrating a systemic failure by medical providers to recognize critical warning signs and intervene before tragedy occurs. Key developments surrounding the witness list have drawn significant attention as jury selection continues in Plymouth Superior Court. Patrick Clancy, the defendant's husband, is actually expected to take the stand after being named to both prosecution and the defense witness lists. Despite losing his 3 children, Clancy has publicly forgiven his wife, maintaining that she was a loving mother who was completely transformed by a severe, sudden medical crisis. Defense attorneys plan to use his testimony to show her rapidly deteriorating mental state in the weeks leading up to the tragedy, as well as her proactive efforts to seek psychiatric care and follow prescribed medication regimens. At the same time, Superior Court Judge William Sullivan ruled against a defense motion seeking to call 15 women who had personally survived postpartum psychosis. Defense lawyers argued that these women could offer crucial testimony on the terrifying nature of the condition, including sudden auditory hallucinations and intrusive thoughts. Now, prosecutors successfully opposed the request, arguing that introducing witnesses with no direct connection to the facts of the case would create a distracting secondary trial and unfairly sway the jury. Judge Sullivan agreed, ruling that expert medical witnesses, rather than individuals sharing personal stories, are the proper avenues for explaining the psychiatric condition to jurors. Prosecutors do maintain that Clancy acted with intentional premeditation, pointing to her asking her husband to leave the home on an errand shortly before the killings occurred. They argue that her actions were planned and deliberate, rather than the result of a loss of control, pressing for first-degree murder charges and convictions that carry a mandatory life sentence. As 18 jurors are impaneled in Plymouth Superior Court, the trial stands to set major legal precedents on how the justice system evaluates criminal responsibility when severe postpartum psychiatric conditions are involved. This is clearly a case that is continuing to develop. It happened in 2023. The trial is just now ramping up. And it's a tough situation, right? You have a parent who had 3 beautiful children, and with that last 8-month-old child developed postpartum psychosis and eventually took their lives. It's a very heavy case. We'll be following it closely, so make sure you check our social media and our website for more details on the case. I'm MALIYAH Simone. You're watching Civil Rights Daily News. We'll be right back with some local news.
You are watching
CRDN
Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.
Welcome back. You're watching Civil Rights Daily News. I'm MALIYAH Simone. We've got some local stories to start with today, and it includes the weather. It's been pretty crazy in this area. New York and New Jersey have struggled with the wildfire air quality issues last weekend, as well as more flash flooding last weekend. I couldn't even leave my house. It was pretty crazy out there. And we're dealing with it again today. There's been flight cancellations. There has been, again, flash flooding, even a tornado or two in New Jersey and in New York. A severe weather system is to blame. It swept across the tri-state area, triggering tornado alerts and widespread flash flooding across New York and New Jersey. The National Weather Service issued tornado watches covering tens of millions of residents from New Jersey up into upstate New York, with confirmed tornadoes reported in Morris County and in Stanhope. These powerful storms knocked down trees and power lines, forcing traffic closures on key roadways. Upstate New York, including Sullivan County, also faced rotating storm cells that prompted emergency warnings, which is completely terrifying. Torrential downpours dumped up to 3 inches of rain per hour, producing rapid flash flooding across major urban corridors. In New York City, rising floodwaters submerged critical highways, including the Clearview Expressway in Queens, as well as the Long Island Expressway, which is how a lot of travelers get back and forth from the city. Travel across the region was heavily disrupted as floodwaters entered subway stations and ground stops at Newark, Liberty, John F. Kennedy, as well as LaGuardia airports, which led to hundreds of those flight cancellations that I mentioned earlier. Even today, there are still flight cancellations from those storms and from the cells that are moving through our area. In New Jersey, flash flooding stranded vehicles across Bergen, Passaic, Essex, and Hudson counties, prompting emergency responders to conduct multiple water rescues in Newark and in North Bergen. Utility providers deployed extra crews to address thousands of power outages, while transportation officials instituted temporary bans on empty tractor trailers across area bridges due to severe wind gusts. It's pretty dangerous out there to be driving an empty tractor trailer. The climate crisis has been a topic given all of this severe weather in the area from last weekend to this weekend, the wildfires in Canada and here at home. Meteorologists and climate scientists point to long-term atmospheric warnings as a warming as a primary driver behind the increasing frequency and intensity of severe weather events in the Northeast. Basic atmospheric physics dictates that for every degree Celsius increase in global temperature, the air holds approximately 7% more water vapor. In the northeastern United States, where temperatures have risen steadily over the past decades, this increased atmospheric moisture directly translates into more intense precipitation during storm events, which is what's causing that flash flooding. Federal climate assessments show that the Northeast experienced a greater increase in extreme precipitation than any other region in the country, with heavy rain events rising more than 50% since the mid-20th century. Warmer surface temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean also provided additional heat and energy to the storm systems that were moving through New York and New Jersey this past week and this week. The thermodynamic energy increased updraft strength within localized thunderstorms, which contributed to high hourly rainfall rates and atmospheric instability capable of spawning those rotating storm cells known as tornadoes and severe wind gusts. The shift toward heavier downpours over shorter time frames created immediate challenges for regional infrastructure. Urban environments across New Jersey and in New York, characterized by dense pavement and aging draining networks, were built around historical weather patterns rather than current rainfall rates, which means that when we get those storms, they dump multiple inches of rain per hour. Urban drainage capacity is rapidly exceeded, transforming heavy precipitation events into fast-moving flash floods. That's why you see the subways flood when we are in a torrential downpour and you're not able to take the lines like the 1 line or the Q. It's pretty bad out there. So keep in mind that whenever you're outside and you have these warnings, that you heed them. Stay indoors if you don't need to travel. Even if you need to take public transit, understand that there is a chance that these areas are flooded as well. It's not just driving. If you are driving, do not drive through puddles. You don't know how deep it is. It can cause damage to your car and also cause life-threatening situations. So be safe out there. I think we get a small break and then the rains return. So be safe. Use caution. We'll be right back with more local news. You're watching Civil Rights Daily News. I'm MALIYAH Simone.
You are watching
CRDN.
Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.
Tune into Civil Rights Daily News, TikTok, YouTube, and our website to catch CRDN Sidelines with Cam and Reggie. All your sports news reporting on a dime. Catch CRDN Sidelines every Wednesday starting May 6th from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Catch CRDN Real Take with Samia Charles live Sunday mornings from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. starting May 10th. For Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, I'm Jade Lopez.
watching
CRDN.
Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.
We're back. You're watching Civil Rights Daily News, and we have, of course, the thing that we've all been waiting for, the FIFA World Cup results. Spain has won the World Cup after a long time running. Spain captured the 2026 FIFA World Cup title with a 1-0 extra-time victory over the defending champion Argentina at MetLife Stadium here in East Rutherford, New Jersey. There were so many people, so many crowds, and it's been something that we've been anticipating for weeks, for months, for years. Substitute forward Ferran Torres scored on the match's only goal in the 106th minute, striking a left-footed volley under the crossbar early in the second period of extra time. Torres entered the match in the 61st minute, replacing Michael Oyarzabal. Spain controlled the statistical battle throughout the 120 minutes, outshooting Argentina 20-3 and taking 9 corner kicks to Argentina's 1. Argentina played extra time with 10 men after midfielder Enzo Fernandez received a second yellow card in stoppage time at the end of regulation. Argentinian goalkeeper Emilio Martinez recorded 12 saves, the highest single game total in the World Cup final since official record-keeping began, which is a pretty big achievement for him, so congrats on that, including a dive at which time he stopped a free kick from Lamine Yamal in late regulation. A controversial moment during the post-match trophy presentation at MetLife Stadium has drawn some significant attention online and across international media. Following Spain's victory over Argentina, President Donald Trump joined FIFA President Gianni Infantino on stage to present the medals and hand over the FIFA World Cup trophy. It's the United States, we were hosting, of course that makes sense. After handing the trophy to the Spanish team captain, though, Rodri is his name, President Trump remained standing on the presentation stage alongside the squad of players who prepared to do an official trophy lift. Broadcast footage showed Captain Rodri gesturing towards the side of the stage while waiting to lift the trophy with his teammates. Infantino subsequently stepped in and guided President Trump away from the center of the podium, allowing the Spanish squad to complete their victory photo and trophy celebration. The brief exchange on stage rapidly circulated across social media, as it does, platforms, and international news broadcasts. While Spanish team officials and players didn't make any official formal statements regarding the incident with the president, international media commentary highlighted the awkward nature of the interaction, noting that Infantino had to intervene to clear the frame for the winning team's photo. Commentators also referenced a similar occurrence in 2025 when President Trump remained on stage alongside Chelsea players during the FIFA World Cup victory at the same venue. Nonetheless, the victory marks Spain's second men's FIFA World Cup championship in national team history, following their 2010 title in South Africa. Head coach Luis de la Fuente's squad completed the 2026 tournament undefeated, securing knockout stage wins against Austria, Portugal, Belgium, France, and Argentina. Congratulations to Spain. So many fans were rooting for you, so congratulations. We'll be right back with some more news close to home.
watching
CRDN.
Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.
Welcome back. You're watching Civil Rights Daily News. I'm MALIYAH Simone. We have some interesting information out of New Jersey regarding voter software. We just got news from the New Jersey governor that voting software has given an error in the State Motor Vehicle Commission's system. New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill announced that a software error in the state MVD system erroneously registered approximately 6,600 non-citizens to vote between June 2023 and June 2024. The glitch occurred when individuals who answered no to U.S. citizenship on driver's license or ID applications were automatically added to state voter rolls by software provided by the vendor IDEMIA. A preliminary review conducted by the state revealed that fewer than 400 of those erroneously registered cast actual ballots in the subsequent elections across Democratic, Republican, and unaffiliated registrations. Now, the disclosure of the New Jersey registration glitch has intensified national political debates over voter roll maintenance and non-citizen voting. Donald Trump and White House officials, of course, seized on the state's admission to argue that non-citizen voting is an active concern. In recent public statements, Trump renewed claims that improper registrations have compromised election integrity in the past and pointed to the New Jersey incident as evidence that state voter rolls contain ineligible non-citizens. The White House and congressional Republicans used the disclosure to push the passage of the Save America Act, which proposed federal legislation requiring proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections and mandatory photo identification at polling places. The Department of Justice also opened an inquiry requesting detailed voter file data from New Jersey regarding the affected individuals. Election law experts and Democratic officials, including Governor Mikey Sherrill, draw distinct lines between administrative software errors and widespread voter fraud. Nonpartisan election data analysts noted that the fewer than 400 ballots that were cast in New Jersey by improperly registered non-citizens represented less than 1/100th of 1% of total votes that were cast statewide in 2024, spread across Democratic, Republican, and unaffiliated voters. State officials emphasized that the registrations resulted from a vendor software defect rather than an organized effort by voters to falsify records. Additionally, state and federal reviews of past elections, including the 2020 presidential election, maintain that isolated administrative errors have not altered official election outcomes. I know this is a constant conversation that we have here in the U.S. regarding the 2020 election, regarding the 2016 election. There's so many different dialogues that go back and forth regarding what's fraud, what's not fraud. This was specifically a software error that happened just as an error. So it's not voter fraud, but it is an issue that we do need to have resolved for the next elections. You've been watching Civil Rights Daily News. We'll be right back.
civil rights. Daily news, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.
Welcome back. You're watching Civil Rights Daily News. I am MALIYAH SIMONE. We have some updates regarding Trump's polling and approval polling throughout the United States. Newly released national polling shows President Donald Trump's approval rating standing in the mid to upper 30% range, 16 months into his second term. According to the latest survey data from The Economist and YouGov, 36% of Americans, or 39%, approve of the president's overall job performance, while 60% disapprove. A separate Washington Post and IPSOS poll reports that similar findings, with 37% approving and 61% disapproving. Aggregated polling across major tracking places the president's national approval average at 39%, marking a steady decline from the 47% approval record at the start of his current term in early 2025. That was a year ago. Specific policy areas show varying levels of public support. Approved for the administration's handling of the economy sits at 33%, with respondents pointing to cost of living pressures and gasoline prices as the primary concern. Conduct regarding foreign policy and conflict with Iran registered at 29% of approval. Immigration remains a relative area of strength for the administration compared to other issues, though it's only at 40% approval rating, which is just 10 points lower than the start of the term. The demographic breakdown highlights shifting dynamics across the electorate. Strong approval among core Republicans remains high at 81%, but support among Republican-leaning independents has fallen to 52%. The survey also shows that low approval among independent voters overall, with 26% approving. In congressional polling, registered voters currently favor unnamed Democratic candidates over Republican candidates by 6% points on the generic House ballot ahead of the upcoming midterm elections. Among male respondents, 41% approve of the president's job's performance, while female approval stands lower at 32%. And that 9-point gender gap widened significantly when we break it down by age. So among women between the ages of 18 and 29, approval drops to 19% compared to 29% among men in the same age bracket. Now, the older demographic highlights higher support, with approval reaching 50% among men aged 65 and older and 38% among women in that same age group. Racial and ethnic breakdowns also show distinct variations across the electorate. While voters register the highest level of approval at 42%, white voters, my apologies, at 42%. Hispanic approval sits at just 29%, while approval among Asian Americans stands at 24%. Black voters record the lowest approval, with just 17% approving of the president's performance. Educational attainment remains another key line of division, particularly among white voters. White voters without a college degree approve of the president at 45%. That figure drops to 37% among white voters holding a college degree. Across the entire population, regardless of race, college graduates express that there's 36% approval, while postgraduate degree holders register at 29%. Publicly, Donald Trump maintains that his administration's policies are delivering results, consistently dismissing unfavorable public polling as inaccurate or biased. In statements and posts on social media, the president has characterized major national surveys showing broad disapproval as fake news, arguing that mainstream outlets employ flawed methodologies to undermine his agenda. Trump points to internal campaign data and enthusiasm at his public rallies as evidence of sustained voter support, asserting that public sentiment remains firmly behind his second term. Legislative and economic priorities are the things that he says he is getting the most support in. Rather than adjusting strategy in response to the falling approval rates and figures, the administration continues to attribute how polling marks to hostile media coverage, maintaining that the electorate will ultimately validate the president's record in upcoming elections. Political analysts and election strategists emphasize that this disconnect between public data and administration rhetoric highlights a growing divide between official polling and the White House strategy. While independent pollsters point to high gas prices, inflation, and foreign policy concerns as concrete drivers of public dissatisfaction, the president's complete dismissal of survey data risks leaving the administration isolated from broader electorate trends. Critics argue that ignoring consistent cross-demographic declines, particularly among independent voters, creates a blind spot for congressional allies who must now navigate competitive districts without the benefit of unverified internal assumptions. With midterm elections approaching, political observers note that refusing to acknowledge documented voter frustration does not eliminate the electoral risks facing the party in power, which is the Republican Party. These primary elections and these general elections are coming up in November, so keep that in mind. Many states are battleground states, so it's very important to make sure that you are getting your vote in. We just recently had our other elections, and those are now determining who is going to be the front runner. There's more polls that are going on, so we'll continue to track this. You've been watching Civil Rights Daily News. I'm MALIYAH Simone. Have a good day.
You are watching
CRDN.
Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.
Tune into Civil Rights Daily News, TikTok, YouTube, and our website to catch CRDN Sidelines with Cam and Reggie. All your sports news reporting on a dime. Catch CRDN Sidelines every Wednesday starting May 6th from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Catch CRDN Real Take with Samia Charles live Sunday mornings from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. starting May 10th. For Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, I'm Jade Lopez.
You are watching
CRDN.
Civil Rights Daily News, recycling only the truth in rotation 24 hours a day.